Shut up and sit down.
This is Holistic Vigilantes, hosted by Dr. Kimberly Bear and Dr. Jennifer Tippegrath. These two badass dentists are breaking the mold to provide modern dentistry that doesn't compromise overall health. Determined to spread the word, the Vigilantes are kicking down the door as they bring you honest answers to hard questions. Buckle up for a wild ride down the Meridian Highway as they explore the connection between oral health and whole body health, saving the world one smile at a time. And now, the Holistic Vigilantes.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Tippegrath.
And I'm Kimberly Bear.
And we are the Holistic Vigilantes. I laugh every time. I love it. Today we are talking about dental amalgams, also known as mercury fillings, silver fillings, metal fillings. It's our thing. We do a lot of it every day, all day. We talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say it's our,
it's a cornerstone. It's a cornerstone, hopefully not for much longer, but it is the cornerstone of sort of how this whole little niche of dentistry separates itself from others. Sure.
Because a lot of you guys probably have questions about what is holistic dentistry, and you can go to our first podcast. We talk, about that, and also to our website, Natural Dentist Associates. Great information on there about some of the services that we do. I mean, we still do fillings, crowns, cleanings, implants, everything, but we do stuff to help support the body and take stuff off the table in terms of insults.
Yeah, toxicity.
So, Kim, if you want to talk about what they are, what you see with them.
All right. Yeah. So this is, I'm hoping, because I have this conversation several times a day, that my patients will be able to turn to this and listen to it. Amalgam fillings are silver fillings, are those brown or gray and black fillings that we all got when we were kids, and especially our back teeth. And I remember as a kid going to the dentist, and we went every 6 months, and I'm the youngest of three, and you'd come out of the room and you'd say, I only had 2 or I only had 1. So every back tooth in my mouth was filled with 1. And then I'm just going to go through really quickly sort of how I got to where I'm at with my stance on fillings. I was then in dental school. No family member in my family is a dentist. I never worked in a dental office. And I'm sitting there in the first year in dental school at University of Maryland, and they have material people. So the people from 3M come in and they talk about amalgam fillings. And they got the little box with the carpules in there. And they talk about how basically you place an amalgam filling in a tooth, and it's about 50% mercury, and you see the mercury ball, and they say, at about 10 years, if this filling is done well, it needs to be replaced. The longest, maybe 12. I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, first of all, my mouth is filled with these things, and they're probably all 20 years old. No one told me I had to replace them. They said, because after about 10 years, and sometimes sooner, it depends on the environment and how you take care of them. Because they're 50% mercury, what happens is it very, very slowly off-gases in your mouth. And then if you think about it, the material is 50% mercury. So you're slowly losing this mercury. It is a very slow, but as the filling material gets older, the mercury is released faster. So they said you develop around the filling, this little micro gap where the mercury was. So you developed a little tiny gap between the filling and the tooth. And if you don't remove them at the 10-year mark, you'll get decay underneath of them. This is a very slow process. You don't feel anything. And then what happens is you end up keeping these fillings for, let's say, 20 years because you don't see anything. You don't feel anything. On your x-rays, the metal blocks everything out. So your dentist doesn't know until the cavity is so big that, you need a root canal or a crown. Right? Or the tooth starts hurting.
Or worst case scenario, extraction.
Yes. And so I'm sitting there listening to this. I'm like, crap, my mouth is full of these things. No one told me that. I didn't know. Because most dentists do not like to remove them unless there's a problem. And you're not going to see a problem in a well-placed amalgam mercury for many years past its due date. Another problem, so then when I became a dentist, and I started looking at these old amalgam fillings and going there with the camera, is all these little micro cracks and throughout a tooth. If you take a molar and you put amalgam filling in there, it's 50% mercury. Forget that mercury is one of the most toxic substances on the planet. Okay, I'm going to shelf that because but it's 50% mercury. So like mercury and a thermometer, it expands and contracts with heat. So every time you drink something hot or you drink something cold, if you drink something hot, like in a thermometer, that 50% of that filling expands. And we learn this in dental school. And then it contracts and it does this. It pulsates. The filling material gets much bigger and much smaller with the temperature changes in your mouth. And you develop these little cracks everywhere. You don't feel it. It's a very slow process. So when you take these fillings out, there's microfractures everywhere. And that is why when people go in and they have their amalgam fillings removed, they're like, oh my God, nothing hurt until they took my filling out. Now everything hurts. It's because we took it out. And then we put a material like a resin, a composite resin in there.
Or ceramic-based filling material like we use.
Yeah. And not so much with the ceramic ones, but especially with the resin ones, when you put them in there, they don't expand and contract like the amalgam did. But what they do is you put them in there and you light cure it and it expands a little bit to seal it. So it takes all those little fracture lines and it goes and it holds them open. It doesn't go back like this. It holds them open. And then you're like, oh my God, every time I bite down, it hurts. Those fracture lines are there. The new fillings did not do that to your teeth. The problem was there. You just didn't realize it. So when I started taking out these metal fillings, and they were over 10 years old on my patients, and especially my family members, what you see underneath of them is just massive decay. Mm-hmm. The patient has no idea. Every time you take one out, if it's over 10 years old, I will bet you $100 there's going to be a cavity there. Mm-hmm. So
that's like why we say it's like when you renovate a floor, you like take out the floor and you're like, oh, that's what's underneath.
Yeah, exactly. So people are like, well, why would I want to take these fillings out then? Right? Well, you hold on to that filling and you will tell me why 10 years or 20 years later, because you will lose that tooth. So you can either get rid of the problem earlier and you'll have more options, or you can hang on to it. And that's fine too, because a lot, and you'll just end up with a crown or a root canal or whatever. So that's just like the structural thing. So
down to the history a little bit.
Well, and then quickly,
sure.
So then I was removing these all day long. I was never placing them. I was removing them the first 5 years out of practice.
And sorry to interrupt, what would you say was the driving factor why you started removing them?
Well, first of all, I started showing people what was underneath of them, mm-hmm. and they were failing. And I would, and then the biggest thing, especially at the beginning of the 2000s, was everybody wants them out because they're ugly, and the aesthetic factor.
Cosmetic, white teeth.
Yeah.
They don't want black or metal teeth.
So with no precautions, I was literally drilling on amalgam fillings all day, mm-hmm. every day. I had my first child. He had a lot of health issues. And then I came across Hannah Bradford, a local acupuncturist, gave me some information. She was looking for a local dentist that wouldn't charge a lot to remove her patients' amalgam fillings. She had me watch some videos. And they were clean heart videos and videos from the IOMT. And it was a little disturbing on the amount of what mercury vapor does to you when you remove these fillings and how it's absorbed. And there's no barriers to the fetus. So I had a hair analysis done on myself, and this was like 2000. And they can't tell you the exact amount you have in it, but I was off the charts. Mm-hmm. So I'm riddled with amalgam at this point. With mercury. I am considered mercury toxic.
Yeah. And of most dentists.
Yeah. So then I did a hair analysis on my 1-year-old son. And he is as well, mm-hmm. because I carried him the whole time I was doing this. And that is when I got into changing everything in my practice the way we did it.
That's like right when I started assisting you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I walked in, it was 2007, and it's like charcoal gas masks and big like air filters. And I was just like, what is going on here? You're like, we have to figure out a way how we're going to tell the patients
without scaring
them how we're going to be wearing this stuff.
I know. My patients had a regular family practice, and they were like, wait a minute. I'd walk in there with all this gear on, and they're like, you've taken out dozens of these fillings on me with nothing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I know. So like, it was helpful to my patients, but really it was for me and my staff.
Right.
Because we do it all day.
Every day.
Yeah. So that's why.
And now it's just funny because with COVID, everyone has to wear these masks and they're like asking us where we got them. And you're like, I've had these masks for 20 years or whatever, 15 years. Yeah.
I know. I think it's common sense, and there's no downside.
Right. Of course.
It's just
some extra equipment to put on yourself and the patient.
But I think to really understand it, you have to understand the history.
Yeah. So a little bit about the history. Amalgam is a dental material that's used to fill cavities. Unfortunately, though, it does require a certain depth. So with the newer materials, there's no required depth. You clean out the decay and you fill it. So it could be like 0.5 millimeter. But with amalgams, you're looking at like 2 millimeters. So you're taking away healthy tooth structure, which sucks, obviously. Amalgam is a mixture of metals, silver, tin, copper, and more than 50% mercury. And then when the liquid mercury binds together with that metal mixture, it forms an amalgam. So it gets put in there. I'll be honest, I only placed maybe like 1 or 2 in dental school. And then, but from what I've heard, and you can probably attest to this, it was easy to place, right? You just kind of plop it in.
Oh, it's great material.
Carve it. Form it.
It's great to carve it. You can do a really good job, and it's easy. It doesn't have to be a dry environment. So it's an excellent material, especially with like a special needs patient. Yeah. There's certain patient populations it's very difficult to use other materials with. That's why it's used. It's cheap, strong, easy to place, versus like the newer materials that are equally as strong, but they're much harder to place. They're very technique sensitive. You have to have decreased moisture in the area or no moisture at all, which, as you imagine, in the mouth with a ton of saliva, it's hard, especially on a child that's moving around or adult with a strong gag reflex. But anyways, so these unfortunately release low levels of mercury vapor. And this has been proven now with research and scientific experiments. You can just Google like the smoking tooth. You can see it. And unfortunately, it's absorbed by the cheeks, the tongue. What about like the history?
So we can talk about that. So basically, when we were doing a little bit of digging, like how long have these really been around for? It's like, how long really? So we found that the earliest known use of dental amalgam fillings in Tang Dynasty texts written by this guy, I don't know, Dr. Liu, in 1505 states that that it brought over like 100 shares of mercury, okay? But then it was really introduced into the Western world in the 1830s, and it's been a controversy pretty much ever since. Then in 1844, it was reported that in the United States, 50% of all dental restorations placed in upstate New York consisted of amalgam. However, at the point the use of dental amalgam was declared to be malpractice, and the American Society of Dental Surgeons, the only U.S. dental association at the time, forced all of its members to sign a pledge to abstain from using mercury filling.
Because they knew mercury was toxic at that point. And they were like, we cannot, even though it's easy to work with, even though we love it, because it's nice to work with.
Yeah. So basically, 1833, it was brought to the United States. 1844, it was declared malpractice, okay? But this was now the beginning of what's called the Dental Amalgam War. And the dispute ended in 1856 with the disbanding of this old association, and dun dun dun, the start in 1859 of the American Dental Association, which the ADA does great things. They lobby for us. They do all this stuff, but the ADA has said, there are certain, populations along with like FDA that shouldn't be using, and we'll get into that. But yeah, so that's like the history about what it's made of, how it came here, why it's used. It's easy, cheap.
Yeah, there's been such controversy, and there's been a lot of dentists who have been persecuted for speaking out against it, and the ADA has been very much against it. But I think it's something that's very complicated because until recently, there weren't a lot of options for materials for dentists to use. And there wasn't as much access to research and things that we know now. And I do see it being phased out. I think ultimately the biggest culprit is the insurance companies. That's all. When I was an in-network provider, I had to stop being an in-network provider because they would only pay you for a filling. It didn't matter what material you used. So if I used a composite or a porcelain, I was reimbursed as if it was an amalgam filling. Because for an amalgam filling, at that time, I would be reimbursed $40. So it would cost me, let's say, $150 in materials to put this filling in because I was not using amalgam. But I would only get paid $40 because they said they will only pay for amalgam fillings. So it makes you, so if this insurance company is paying for, let's say, 1 million amalgam fillings, what are they going to want to happen if the material that's needed to use not amalgam fillings is twice as much, which it is. So they're going to really push for amalgam fillings because clearly not only is it's a very strong material, it lasts a long time, and it's dirt cheap.
So that's basically what the ADA says. It says dentists, this is in quotes, dentists have used dental amalgam for a long time, which they have.
Yeah.
And we know it's durable, reliable, and safe. This is what they say. While dental amalgam is one effective restorative material, dental treatment is not one size fits all. As dentists, we are always working with our patients to help them make well-informed decisions based on their individual needs. So, with that being said, the FDA is now talking about people that should not have these, about pregnant women and developing fetuses, women who are planning to become pregnant, nursing women and newborn infants, children under the age of 6, people with pre-existing neurological disease, people with impaired kidney function, people with heightened sensitivity or allergy to mercury and other materials in dental amalgam. So,
yeah, they're very controversial. The FDA, so if you go to the FDA site and you look under amalgam fillings and recommendations, they will say that they do not recommend that women who are pregnant or who are planning to get pregnant, nursing mothers, or children get amalgam fillings, which is very interesting to me.
Right from the FDA website, right?
Yeah. So if a female ever is considering having a child, does that mean that all females shouldn't have amalgam fillings? Or how about men? It makes no sense. So why is it's not safe for children under 6, but it is safe for children over 6?
Yeah. What's the deciding factor?
Or at what point does mercury become less toxic to someone?
So then that's a good question. So we talked about off the release and stuff after the filling's been for 10 years. So we'll talk a little bit about the removal. We follow the IAOMT, which is the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. They have spent so much time and effort with science and research to really support a very good protocol called the SMART protocol. It's a very, very solid protocol for safely removing these. So basically proper air circulation in the room with ventilation and suctions and putting barriers on your patient to protect their skin, protect yourself. You wear a charcoal gas mask. Proper isolation of the tooth with a dental dam, which every dentist has pretty much. And some charcoal beforehand to bind anything that may be released. Just certain little things that can make a huge difference for your staff, for yourself, for your patients. And it's stuff that Kim at Natural Dentist Associates, you've been doing for at least 15 years or so, right?
Yeah.
You've been doing it for a while. But, some of our patients, they'll come in and they'll do their own research about why they want these removed. And they'll come in requesting this service, obviously. But signs of some issues if you're having with long-term mercury exposure or toxicity or poisoning, insomnia, irritability, memory loss, colitis, diarrhea, high or low blood pressure, irregular pulse, chest pains, headaches, dizziness, bronchitis, shallow breathing. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, obviously, if you're working with a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor, and there's ways to get your mercury levels checked.
Well, how many people are suffering from these things that you know, or just one or two of them? And it'd be very curious, not even just with mercury, with all heavy metals. Like if it was part of that physical, if everybody had to be checked for heavy metals in their system or a heavy metal load, how many misdiagnoses would there be? I mean, it's so the EPA lists, if you go to their website, what to do if a thermometer breaks. So we're talking about 2 tablespoons of mercury, so equivalent to 2 amalgam fillings. The amount of mercury that's in 2 amalgam fillings. If 2 tablespoons are released into the environment, you have to call the National Response Center, and with any amount, not even just 2 million, any amount of mercury is spilled, all children must be evacuated from the area. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me get So if I activate a thing, so when you get a carpule for amalgam, it's separated. You have the ball of mercury, which you can see, and you have the metal mix on the other side, and you mix them together. So you do that in the room, and then you put it in the tooth, and you flatten it out and carve it up. Interesting. So you're supposed to remove children from a room that has any mercury in it.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
So those are some things and then now, finally, in other countries, and we've been doing it for a while, it's mandatory that dental offices, the EPA has said that dental offices are the number one source of mercury dumped into the water system. 5.1 tons of mercury a year in the U.S. from dental offices.
Into the water where the fish live.
And so the EPA is like running around screaming and are super angry about this, and they've finally been able to pass that dentists have to have a filter in their office to stop dumping this water because it's killing people, because it's going into their water system. This is the mercury that's coming out of their mouths, that we're drilling out of their mouths, and then it's going to the water system, and then it's coming back in. So now dental offices have to have this filter in their office, which is great. In other countries, it's been, mandatory for a really long time, but we're finally doing it here. And so I find that super fascinating that it's not safe to take your amalgams out of your mouth and put them in the river, but they're okay if they stay in your mouth.
Well, yeah, and also there's like those special, I remember seeing them in dental school, these like special bins that when you were done mixing in the little capsule, the material, you'd have to put it in the special bin. You can't put it in the regular trash. So it's not safe really while you're placing it, but it's safe when it goes in the mouth, but then it's not safe when it comes out. How do we explain that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
They have lots. But the point is that, and it's not even about, and this is another, I was just looking on the world, on the WHO site, World
Health Organization,
WHO. Top 10 toxins that everyone should be aware of in their environment that is causing chronic disease. And 2 of the top 10 are dental materials. They're saying these are the things that are killing everybody. We got mercury and fluoride.
And fluoride will be another podcast because you could just Google, like, there's a website, 50 reasons why you don't need fluoride, and there's research to back every single one of them.
Yeah, we know you're not supposed to ingest it. You can read that it's basically every tube of toothpaste and stuff. Yeah. If you only got fluoride when you went to the dentist or in the dental office, it was applied topically to your teeth, there's definitely some benefits there, but
drinking it.
Yeah, no, it's toxic. So these are things that we'll touch on again and have lots of questions for, and we will be discussing with people at the FDA soon in this podcast. So sign up and let's see what happens.
Yeah. Review us, rate us, like our podcast, please. Yes.
Only good stuff, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
And check us out, naturaldentistassociates.com. Thank you.
All conversations and information exchanged during participation of the Holistic Vigilantes podcast or interaction within the social media umbrella of the Holistic Vigilantes pages are strictly for educational and entertainment purposes.